So about 5 months ago, and hi, I'm on the floor. I felt like sitting for this video for some reason. I posted a video about wanting to make a change in my life. And this change was born from a sense of being a little bit too comfortable in my life at the time. And the change was basically, it revolved around moving to Japan and the realizations as to why I wanted to move to Japan. And just as a continuation on that, and I think I'll actually be making this an entire series on its own. But as a continuation, I have a little bit of news to share in on that front about moving to Japan. But I also thought that it would be interesting to tell you a little bit of the backstory behind, my history with Japan, and a little bit of the reflections that I had in my year living there, because I had previously lived there for a little while, and how that's going to change moving forward, and then obviously what the update is, and all that kind of stuff. And I got this idea because sometimes I say in my videos that if you know me and my work, you'll know that I love Japan, but not everyone knows my work, and not everyone has stuck around for the origin stories of my career, and or even being on Instagram that long, or even being on YouTube that long from the start, or anything like that. So I wanted to document that as a piece in the overall series, in the overall arc of me eventually moving to Japan and what that looks like. So yeah, for me and my story and my relationship with Japan, I made a video on why exactly I love Japan very, very early on in this YouTube channel, so you can check that out. I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. But the basic sentiment is that I grew up with a lot of Japanese influence in some way, and it was only in actually going there in 2017 for the first time that all of these different values and ideas and philosophies that were very integral into my life were finally kind of realized for real in the flesh. And that was really interesting to me. And since 2017, I have been there about a dozen times back and forth, doing commercial gigs, doing commercial work, doing a lot of exploration on my own. I've been up and down the country, literally from the northmost point of the country down all the way to the bottom. I've traveled to every major city, and I've done more prefectures in Japan than I haven't. And there was one period of time where I lived there back in 2019, 2020. For 1 year on a working holiday visa, and I got to experience what Japan was like from an actual resident point of view, and not from a tourist point of view. And I'll dig in a little bit more into that in just a minute. But all this to say that I freaking love Japan. A lot of my, if not the majority of my business, of my portfolio, of the career that I've built for myself, the success that I've had, all that kind of stuff is all based around Japan in some way. And I'm deeply grateful for the experiences that I've had there, and for the experiences that have led me up to this point. And I want to double down on that and really, really go for it, and try and make something even more out of it, and move further in that direction. And so that's why I also want to move to Japan. So one of the things that I find interesting about the difference between living in Japan versus just being a tourist there is that I don't know, Japan has kind of two sides, right? So there's this really gorgeous, shiny, beautiful Japanese experience when you're a tourist. Things are efficient, things run really well. It's a crazy technologically advanced kind of country. You get served sushi on a train, and there's Shinkansens that go at 300 kilometers an hour, and everything's really efficient and really fun, and bright lights, and all this kind of stuff you get really enamored by. And it's a lot of, Japan has a lot of charm, right, just in and of itself. But living there for a little while and coming back and forth all the time makes you realize every city, every country has its own problems, its own set of quirks, its own set of idiosyncrasies that you kind of don't find out until you really dig in a little bit under the surface and start to see all these different things that you didn't originally think were there. So things like, the fact that Japan in general has a very big, I wouldn't say it's huge, but there is a xenophobic kind of fear where like anyone who is not a Japanese national is a foreigner, and it's just not a very multicultural country, and things are oftentimes quite significantly more difficult for foreigners, especially if you don't speak the language or read the language as well. There are other things like crazy things like Hanko stamps, fax machines, and business cards still being used as like first-class citizens in as a social system in a modern day kind of society. Things like paperwork and red tape for every single little thing you need to do. It's all part and part of the culture that people find so charming with the country. And that's just what you get. You take the bad with the good. For me, there is way more good to Japan than there is bad. Thus, why I am moving there, and I'm excited to find out a little bit more about that and more of the experiences around living there as an actual resident, and building a circle of friends, and discovering the country just a little bit more. I do have a little bit of a goal to travel to every single prefecture. As I mentioned before, like I've traveled more than half of all of the prefectures in Japan, including a lot of the smaller ones. Been to every capital city, but yeah, I want to go all over Japan. I think that'll be absolutely amazing. And I just wanted to discover it and spend the next 3 to 5 years really trying my hardest to understand it and get involved and shake up my life in that way and shake up my career in that way too. I think that'd be really, really interesting. And so yeah, I'm super excited to go over, and I wanted to share this part of the journey with you because I'm pleased to say that the very first stage of my visa application process has begun. So a little bit of I guess clarity and transparency. In the last video I mentioned that my options for getting a visa was to go with an agency, like an influencer agency, and usually you get like sponsorships and all that kind of stuff for that, and in return you give them an arrangement, whatever the case may be. It's different for everyone, but I've actually found a different method which I'm super stoked about. So my girlfriend knows someone who owns a particular company. I'm not going to give you the details about that because I want to keep everything kind of private and that kind of stuff, just to protect myself, and because honestly I don't know what's going to happen. But basically this company is going to sponsor my visa, and in return I'm going to be doing some consulting, some photography, and be employed with this company, but it does give me a lot of freedom, this particular arrangement. And this was the freedom that I was alluding to in the last video, and it's a freedom that was a non-negotiable for me. So I'm super stoked that I got to find this company and that I'm going about it in this way. And Japan just finished Golden Week, and so my application was a little bit slower than what I had originally planned. So now that Golden Week is over, everything is starting, and we've gone through the very initial stages, very first stages, very early days of the visa process, and we're going through the visa lawyers and all that kind of stuff, and it's just a super exciting time for me that I was just really pumped to share. And I'm super excited about it. The company is awesome, and I can't wait to tell you all about it if I get the chance to. And the circumstances just align for me, and I am super optimistic about this process, but at the same time I'm kind of being cautious about it as well, because applications for visas, they don't necessarily go through every single time. You know, I might get declined, who knows, and the process is just, there's so many variables to it, right? So, but you know, I thought I would share at least this side of the process just to get the story, and to, I think it'll make an interesting one. And yeah, that's it for this video. It was just a little bit of a story time with Uncle Pat K to kind of set the scene for hopefully the rest of the series and my eventual process moving to Japan. Yeah. All right. Hope you found that interesting. I'll see you in the next video, but until then, get out there and make something that matters. Peace. I'm getting pins and needles. Haven't sat down like this in so long. Okay.